It began like any other chaotic morning in Washington, but within hours, the entire nation was on fire with one shocking headline that no one saw coming. Reports started flooding social media that former President Donald Trump had allegedly uncovered something so explosive about Congresswoman Ilhan Omar that it could change her life forever. Rumors spread faster than wildfire, and within minutes, hashtags like Omar deported and Herr Trump strikes again dominated every trending list. News outlets scrambled to verify what was real and what wasn't, but the whispers were too loud to ignore. Trump had just discovered something Ilhan had done years ago, something serious enough to send her back to her country. At first, many dismissed it as political gossip, but then came a mysterious post from Trump's official Truth Social account. It was vague, ominous, and packed with the kind of suspense only he could stir. "When the truth comes out, America will understand," it read, followed by the American flag and a pair of glaring eye emojis. That one message sent shockwaves across the country. Fans of Ilhan were outraged, accusing Trump of stirring hate once again, while his loyal supporters celebrated, claiming justice was finally on its way. By mid-morning, reporters were already camped outside Ilhan's D.C. residence, trying to get a word from her staff. Inside her home, sources claimed the tension was unbearable. One aide allegedly described the atmosphere as pure chaos, with phones ringing non-stop and Ilhan pacing the hallway, trying to piece together how this sudden wave of accusations had even started. Her closest allies advised her to stay quiet, but according to insiders, Ilhan refused. "I won't be silenced," she reportedly told her team, her voice trembling but fierce. "If this is what they want, then they'll get the truth, my truth." Meanwhile, Trump's inner circle was buzzing with its own kind of energy. Several of his longtime confidants hinted that what he had found wasn't just political dirt, it was something deeply personal. The implication alone was enough to ignite countless theories. Some claimed it involved falsified documents from her early years in America. Others whispered about an alleged hidden connection overseas. The internet turned into a battlefield overnight. Influencers, podcasters, and talk show hosts all dove into the frenzy, analyzing every photo, every old interview, every slip of the tongue that could hint at what she might have done. And as the tension grew, one shocking development added fuel to the fire. A leaked voice note, allegedly from someone within Trump's campaign, surfaced online. In it, a male voice claimed, "He's got proof, and once it's public, she's finished." Whether real or not, the clip spread like wildfire. Within hours, protesters gathered outside both the Capitol and Omar's Minnesota office, some demanding her removal, others standing in support. Emotions ran high on every side, and the political divide turned personal. Friends unfollowed friends. Families argued over dinner tables. And in the middle of it all, Ilhan Omar herself prepared to face the most dangerous storm of her career. What did Trump really discover? Why was everyone so convinced it would lead to her deportation? And most importantly, was Ilhan hiding a secret that could truly end her time in America? The answers, it seemed, were about to unfold in a scandal no one could look away from. The morning after Trump's cryptic post, Washington felt like a pot ready to boil over. News vans lined the streets, flashing cameras catching every twitch of Ilhan Omar's face as she left her townhouse, her expression unreadable behind dark sunglasses. Reporters shouted her name, desperate for a reaction, but she said nothing. The silence only fueled speculation. By noon, cable networks were already running segments titled "The Scandal That Could Shake Congress." Inside the White House, Trump's advisors were allegedly in closed-door meetings, trying to contain leaks while the former president himself seemed to enjoy the chaos he had unleashed. According to one insider, Trump had spent the morning watching the coverage with a grin, saying, "They're finally going to see who she really is." Meanwhile, in Minnesota, Ilhan's family and friends were in disbelief. Her sister, according to neighbors, was seen crying outside their family home, saying she couldn't believe what was happening. "She's not that kind of person," she told a local reporter, her voice breaking. "Whatever they're saying, it's lies." But the internet had already chosen sides. On social media, supporters of Trump called her a fraud, while others defended her as the victim of another political witch hunt. Memes, fake documents, and old photos flooded every corner of the web, each one claiming to reveal the truth. Some even alleged that she had falsified her marriage records to gain immigration benefits decades ago. Inside Ilhan's team, panic was spreading. Aides were whispering about a document that had somehow resurfaced from her early years in the country, something connected to her refugee application. One staff member told a journalist off record that the paper could be twisted in dangerous ways. Ilhan herself spent hours in her office, refusing to speak to most of her team. Those who saw her said she looked exhausted, her eyes red from sleepless nights. One aide said she kept whispering the same phrase over and over, "This can't be happening again." What again meant, no one knew, but it hinted at something from her past that she had tried to bury. As the story grew, Trump's supporters began calling for her deportation, claiming she had betrayed the American people. Rallies erupted in several states with chants of "send her back" echoing across city squares. The tone was ugly, and even some of Trump's former allies started to question if things were going too far. One conservative commentator said on live television, "If this is true, it's huge, but if it's not, we're playing with fire." Still, Trump showed no signs of backing down. A day later, during a rally in Florida, he hinted again at what he called the big reveal. He told the crowd, "We found something incredible, something that will make you all very proud of your country." The audience erupted in cheers, but no one knew what exactly he was referring to. Late that evening, an anonymous source sent a package to several major news outlets. Inside was a set of scanned papers and a short handwritten note that said, "The truth about Ilhan." The documents appeared to show inconsistencies in her immigration timeline, dates that didn't match, names that seemed altered. Within hours, the files went viral. Though unverified, they were enough to set the media ablaze. Reporters demanded answers. Ilhan's office released a brief statement calling the claims fabricated nonsense, but the damage was done. Her political opponents seized the moment, demanding a full investigation. Behind closed doors, Ilhan's closest advisor, Sarah, begged her to go on camera and defend herself. "You have to speak before he controls the narrative," she said, her voice desperate. Ilhan shook her head. "If I go out there now, they'll twist every word." She replied quietly, "They don't want my truth. They want my downfall." The room fell silent. The weight of her words was heavy, almost prophetic. Outside, crowds gathered near her office, holding signs both for and against her. One protester shouted into a megaphone, "We want justice!" Another yelled back, "Justice for who?" The air was thick with anger and confusion, the line between fact and fiction blurring more with every hour. Meanwhile, a leak from inside Trump's circle revealed that he had been in contact with a retired intelligence officer who claimed to have information about Ilhan's early years in Kenya before she arrived in the United States. The details were murky, but the story spread fast. The claim was that she had once used a different identity, one that could call her citizenship into question. When asked about it during an interview, Trump smiled and said, "Let's just say, America deserves to know who's making the laws." It was a carefully crafted sentence that left room for interpretation but carried a dangerous implication. That night, Ilhan sat in her living room, scrolling through the endless storm of comments on her phone. Some messages were cruel, others filled with tears and prayers. She came across one that read, "Stay strong. They can't erase your truth." She smiled faintly before her phone buzzed again, this time a private message from an unknown number. It read, "They know more than you think. It's not just about the papers." Her heart sank. She looked around the dimly lit room, suddenly feeling like she was being watched. She called Sarah immediately. "Something's wrong," she whispered. "This isn't just politics anymore." The next morning, her fears deepened. A new report claimed that a private investigator hired by a conservative group had uncovered evidence of offshore transactions tied to someone with her family name. Though the report had no proof linking it directly to her, the suggestion alone was enough to cause chaos. Every news channel ran the story. Journalists camped outside her home. Neighbors whispered. Friends avoided her calls. Even within her own party, some began to distance themselves, fearing association could damage their careers. The isolation was crushing. Trump, on the other hand, seemed to thrive on the controversy. He went live once again, this time hinting that official action was being discussed. "The American people have waited long enough," he declared to roaring applause. "It's time we hold everyone accountable, no matter who they are." The crowd chanted his name, waving flags and cheering as if a verdict had already been reached. Behind the scenes, however, even his advisors were divided. Some urged him to release whatever evidence he had to prove his claims, while others warned that escalating the situation without solid proof could backfire. But Trump was not one to retreat. He ordered his team to prepare a statement that would shock the world. Back at Ilhan's home, Sarah walked in with trembling hands, holding a printed copy of what appeared to be a leaked memo. She placed it on the table in front of Ilhan. "They're saying deportation is on the table," she said quietly. Ilhan froze, her breath catching in her throat. "That's impossible," she murmured. "They can't just—" But before she could finish, Sarah interrupted. "They're not talking about legality anymore. They're talking about politics, optics, headlines." Ilhan stood up, pacing across the room. "They're trying to erase me," she said under her breath. Piece by piece. As night fell, protests outside her home grew louder. News helicopters circled overhead. Someone threw a rock at her window, shattering the glass. Sarah screamed, pulling Ilhan away from the edge. Police sirens wailed in the distance. The chaos outside mirrored the storm within. Ilhan sat on the couch, trembling, holding her phone as if it were her only connection to safety. She whispered to herself, "They want me gone because I don't fit their story." But deep inside, something was shifting. The fear that had kept her silent began to turn into anger. She had spent years fighting for her place in America, for the right to belong, to speak, to be seen. Now, with her reputation on the line, she realized she had nothing left to lose. She looked at Sarah and said, "Tomorrow I speak." Sarah's eyes widened. "You're sure?" Ilhan nodded slowly. "They've built a lie around me. It's time to tear it down." As the night stretched into dawn, Washington buzzed with anticipation. Reporters speculated about what she might say. Trump's team prepared counterstatements. Social media boiled with rumors. The world was waiting for Ilhan Omar to break her silence. And as the sun rose over the Capitol dome, a new chapter of the scandal was about to begin. One that would either destroy her completely or expose a truth no one was ready to hear. The city woke up tense, every network cutting into regular programming to cover what they called Ilhan Omar's most important day. Outside the press hall, cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters jostled for space and protesters chanted on both sides of the barricades. Inside, the air was thick with the hum of whispered speculation. Ilhan sat in a small room behind the curtain, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her makeup artist tried to steady her trembling hands, but Ilhan waved her off. "No more masks," she said quietly.
"If they want to see me, they'll see me as I am."
Sarah stood by the door, holding her phone tightly, ready to live stream the moment if the networks tried to distort her words. When she finally walked onto the stage, the room fell silent. Flashbulbs popped, microphones tilted forward, and 1,000 eyes locked on her. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then she said softly, "I know what they're saying about me." Her voice cracked slightly, but she didn't stop. "They're saying I lied, that I cheated, that I don't belong here. But let me tell you something. They've been saying that since the day I arrived in this country." The audience murmured, the tension palpable. She continued, "The truth is not what they're telling you. The truth is much uglier because it's about power, fear, and what happens when someone refuses to stay silent." Outside, the reaction was immediate. Her supporters cheered. Her critics booed. The broadcast went viral within minutes, streaming across every major platform. Trump, watching from his Mar-a-Lago office, reportedly slammed his hand on the desk. "She's playing the victim card again," he growled. One of his aides hesitated before saying, "Sir, people are responding to her. She's getting sympathy." Trump turned sharply, his expression cold. Not for long. He picked up his phone and began typing another post, one that would send the internet into meltdown. Minutes later, his message appeared. "We have the documents. We have the proof. It's worse than anyone thinks." The post exploded across every feed. Anchors cut back to live coverage. Analysts speculated endlessly, and in the chaos, a new figure emerged. An investigative journalist named Ryan Carter, who claimed he had seen the files himself. During a heated interview, Ryan said, "I've reviewed certain materials that suggest major inconsistencies in her background story. Whether it leads to deportation is up to the authorities, but the evidence is concerning." That single statement reignited the storm. Backstage, Ilhan's phone buzzed relentlessly. Sarah read the new headlines aloud, her voice shaking. "They're saying Trump's about to go public with proof." Ilhan clenched her fists. "Let him," she said. "Whatever he's got, it's not the truth." But deep down, a flicker of doubt crept in. There were things from her past, old documents, family stories, that could be misunderstood if twisted the wrong way. She remembered her mother's warning years ago in the refugee camp. "Never trust those who fear your strength." That memory felt heavier now than ever. As the day went on, a mysterious video began circulating online. It showed a grainy image of a woman who resembled Ilhan, signing a paper at an immigration office overseas decades ago. The caption read, This is where it all began. Fact-checkers tried to debunk it, but the damage was done. People shared it millions of times, convinced it was real. Trump supporters used it as proof, while others called it deepfake propaganda. The line between truth and fabrication was no longer visible. That night, Sarah convinced Ilhan to take refuge in a hotel outside the city, away from the noise and the threats. As they drove through the dark streets, Sarah's phone rang again. It was Ryan Carter. She hesitated before answering. "What do you want?" she snapped. Ryan's tone was calm but urgent. "Listen, this isn't what it looks like. You need to know something about the source of those documents." Sarah frowned. "Why would we believe you?" He paused before saying, "Because the source isn't who you think it is. It's someone close to her." The call ended abruptly, leaving a chilling silence in the car. Ilhan stared out the window, her eyes distant. "Someone close to me," she whispered. "Who?" Hours later, alone in her hotel room, Ilhan received an encrypted email from an anonymous sender. The subject line read, "They're using your past against you." Attached were files, scanned pages, old family records, and a letter written in Somali, dated nearly 20 years ago. As she read the translation, her hands trembled. It was from her father. The letter revealed a desperate decision he made during their journey to America, one that could explain the inconsistencies in her documents. He had changed some details to protect their family from being separated. "Forgive me, daughter," it read. "I did what I had to so you could live free." Tears filled her eyes. She realized this was the secret they had uncovered, one built not from deceit, but from survival. But how could she explain that to a country already judging her? How could she tell them her father's sacrifice without destroying his memory? Sarah entered the room. Sacrifice without destroying his memory. Sarah entered the room, quietly, and saw the tears on her friend's face. "What did you find?" she asked softly. Ilhan handed her the letter. Sarah read it, her lips parting in disbelief. "If this gets out," she whispered, "they'll twist it into something evil." Ilhan nodded. "And if I hide it, they'll say I'm guilty." She sank onto the bed, staring at the wall. "No matter what I do, I lose." Meanwhile, in Washington, Trump's team prepared to hold a televised conference promising to reveal the final proof. The room was buzzing with reporters when he walked to the podium, smiling confidently. "Today," he began, "we show the American people what's been hidden for too long." He held up a stack of papers, claiming they contained evidence of immigration fraud and falsified identities. He didn't show them directly, but the gesture alone was enough to spark outrage. "We have reason to believe," he said, "that laws were broken and that deportation should be considered." The crowd erupted in applause. Back at the hotel, Ilhan watched the broadcast in silence. Sarah threw her hands up. "He's lying to their faces," she shouted. But Ilhan's expression remained calm. "No," she said quietly. "He's doing what he's always done, turning fear into power." She turned off the television and stood up. "It's time." Sarah looked confused. "Time for what?" Ilhan replied. "To tell the real story." She grabbed her phone, opened her live stream app, and went live to millions of followers. The screen flickered and suddenly the world saw her face again, tired but determined. "They think they can erase me with lies," she began. "But they don't understand the strength it takes to survive what my family did. My father changed our names to save us from death. He did it so we could live here, so I could stand before you today. If that makes me guilty, then so be it. But don't you dare call it betrayal." Her voice broke mid-sentence, raw with emotion. "This country gave me a chance to live, and I have given it everything in return." The video spread instantly. Supporters flooded the comments with messages of love and outrage, while critics accused her of emotional manipulation. News anchors called it the most powerful moment of her career. Even some of Trump's allies privately admitted it had struck a chord. But the war was far from over. Within hours, Trump responded with another post. "Touching story, but laws are laws. America first." It was cold, sharp, and strategic. His words reignited the fury, and the internet once again divided into warring camps. As night fell, Sarah received another message, this time from Ryan Carter again. "They're planning something bigger," he wrote. "It's not just about deportation anymore. There's talk of criminal charges." She rushed to Ilhan's room, her voice shaking. "They're not stopping, Ilhan. They want to destroy you completely." Ilhan looked out the window at the flashing lights of the city and whispered, "Then they'll have to face the truth first." The next morning, an unexpected twist shook everyone. Leaked footage surfaced online showing a conversation between two of Trump's campaign staffers discussing how to fabricate evidence. The recording was grainy but clear enough to identify voices. "We just need to make it look real," one of them said. "The base will believe anything if he says it." The clip went viral within minutes. Suddenly everything shifted. Reporters demanded explanations. Political commentators questioned the entire narrative. Had the so-called proof been fake all along? Inside Mar-a-Lago, Trump was furious. "Find out who leaked that," he shouted at his team. One advisor muttered, "It's already everywhere, sir." The damage was done. Meanwhile, Ilhan's supporters celebrated online, calling it divine justice. But Ilhan herself remained cautious. "They'll come up with something else," she told Sarah. "People like him never stop when they lose control." She was right, because even as the truth began to turn in her favor, another secret was waiting in the shadows, ready to pull her deeper into the storm. And just when it seemed the tide was shifting, a phone call in the middle of the night changed everything. It was from an unknown number, and the voice on the other end said, "You think this is about Trump? You're wrong. There's someone else behind it all." Ilhan froze, realizing the battle might be far bigger than she had ever imagined. The question was, how deep did the conspiracy really go, and who was pulling the strings from behind the curtain? The answers, once revealed, would shake the foundations of everything she thought she knew. The call ended as abruptly as it began, leaving Ilhan sitting frozen in her hotel room. The voice had been distorted, mechanical, and the words replayed in her head like a haunting echo. Someone else behind it all. She looked over at Sarah, who had fallen asleep on the couch, her phone still in her hand. Ilhan didn't wake her. Instead, she quietly replayed the conversation in her mind. Who could it be? If it wasn't just Trump, then who had enough power and motive to orchestrate such chaos? The question lingered, heavy and dangerous. The next morning, Washington buzzed with confusion. Networks were divided. Some outlets claimed the leaked staff recording proved the entire case was fabricated, while others dismissed it as fake. Trump himself appeared unbothered, calling it another distraction. But deep inside his camp, panic was setting in. Advisors whispered about internal betrayal. One staffer, caught on a hot mic, muttered, "This thing's spiraling, and he's losing grip." Meanwhile, Ilhan's live stream had reached over 50 million views. Her emotional confession and defiance had struck a chord globally. Letters poured into her office from supporters across the world. One note read, "You gave us courage. You reminded us what survival means." Another simply said, "Stand tall." But even with the wave of sympathy, Ilhan couldn't shake the feeling that the game wasn't over. That mysterious call felt like a warning, not a threat. Later that day, Sarah burst into the room with wide eyes. "You need to see this," she said, holding her phone. A video was circulating online, footage of a private dinner between a well-known political donor and a high-ranking intelligence officer. The sound was faint, but one phrase stood out clearly. "If she falls, we all stay safe." The clip sent shockwaves through every platform. Was this the someone else the caller had mentioned? Ilhan paced the floor. "This isn't just about me," she said quietly. "This is about covering something bigger." Sarah frowned. "Like what?" Ilhan looked up. "Like the deals made behind closed doors, the kind that decide who stays in power and who disappears." The idea terrified her, but she couldn't ignore it. If powerful figures were using her as a distraction, she needed to find out what they were hiding. In an unexpected turn, Ryan Carter, the journalist who had once doubted her, reached out again. This time, his voice was urgent. "I have documents that prove this goes beyond Trump. I can't talk over the phone. Meet me in person." Sarah immediately said no. "It's too risky," she warned. But Ilhan was done running. "If he's telling the truth, we need to see it." She put on a coat, pulled her hood low, and left through the hotel's back entrance. They met in an underground parking lot, the kind that felt too quiet for comfort. Ryan stood near a concrete pillar holding a folder. "I don't have much time," he said, glancing around nervously. "These files show connections between certain intelligence contractors and political campaigns. They've been monitoring your movements for months. They wanted you to break so they could push new legislation quietly under the radar." Ilhan frowned. "Legislation for what?" He hesitated. "Expanded surveillance powers. If they make the public fear foreign infiltration again, they can pass anything." Before she could ask more, headlights flooded the lot. 2 black cars pulled in fast. Ryan shoved the folder into her hands. "Go!" he shouted. Sarah grabbed Ilhan's arm and they sprinted toward the exit. Men in suits stepped out of the vehicles shouting orders. They made it into the stairwell just in time, their footsteps echoing through the concrete as they fled upward. When they reached the street, the folder in Ilhan's hands felt like it was burning. Inside were copies of emails, bank transfers, and memos, evidence of a conspiracy so deep it made her dizzy. That night in their new hiding spot, Sarah spread the papers across the floor. "This is insane," she whispered. "If this is real, it's bigger than anything we imagined." Ilhan nodded slowly. "They wanted to destroy me to protect themselves." She picked up one. "Wanted to destroy me to protect themselves." She picked up one of the documents. It referenced a payment made to a shell company days before the rumors about her began. "This was planned," she said. "Every story, every leak, every attack, it was all orchestrated." News broke the next morning that Ryan Carter had vanished. His phone was found abandoned, his apartment ransacked. Speculation swirled that he had been silenced. Ilhan watched the coverage in silence, feeling guilt gnaw at her. "He risked his life for this," she murmured. "And now he's gone." Sarah touched her shoulder. "Then we make sure it wasn't for nothing." Meanwhile, Trump's public appearances became more erratic. One night, during a televised rally, he slipped up. In the middle of his speech, he blurted out a name, one that matched the intelligence officer from the leaked dinner video. The crowd didn't notice, but journalists did. Within hours, analysts were connecting dots between the officer, the donor, and a network of contractors with ties to several politicians. Suddenly, it wasn't just Ilhan under scrutiny. It was the entire system. Still, the pressure on her didn't ease. Threats poured in. Her office was vandalized. She received messages saying, "Go back while you can." The fear was suffocating, but Ilhan refused to hide again. Instead, she prepared a second public statement. "They want me to disappear," she said to Sarah, "but I'm going to make sure everyone sees what they're trying to hide." She planned to release Ryan's documents live, unedited, in front of millions. As the day of the broadcast approached, Washington grew restless. Rumors spread that Trump's team was planning a counterattack. Sarah warned her, "They'll try to discredit you before you even speak." Ilhan nodded. "Then let them. Truth doesn't need permission." She stood before the mirror, rehearsing her words. "They called me a liar," she whispered to her reflection. "They said I didn't belong. Now let's see how they react when I tell them who's really betraying this country." On the morning of the broadcast, the streets outside the studio were packed with protesters and media trucks. Police formed barriers to keep order, but the tension was electric. Inside, technicians prepared the cameras, counting down the minutes. Trump's aides, watching from afar, frantically issued statements questioning the authenticity of any material she might show. One advisor muttered, "If she has something real, we're finished." When the broadcast began, Ilhan appeared calm, her eyes steady on the camera. "For weeks," she said, "they have called me every name imaginable. Traitor, liar, fraud. But I have something they don't. Proof." She lifted the folder, her hands trembling slightly. "This is what they didn't want you to see." She began revealing snippets of the documents, emails linking donors to intelligence officials, outlines of secret payments, and coded memos referring to Project Clean House. The evidence was damning. Social media exploded instantly. Hashtags like Mosh Project, Clean House, and Dotson Truth Over Fear flooded every platform. Analysts scrambled to interpret the meaning. Some called it the biggest political scandal in decades. Others accused her of fabricating everything. In Mar-a-Lago, Trump watched the broadcast in silence for the first time. One of his aides dared to speak. "Sir, do we respond?" Trump didn't answer. He just stared at the screen, his face pale. As the broadcast continued, Sarah received a text from an unknown number. It read, "Turn off the feed now, or she won't make it home." Sarah's heart dropped. She looked around the studio, scanning for anything suspicious. But before she could react, the lights flickered. Ilhan's mic cut out mid-sentence. Confusion erupted as producers shouted. Suddenly, the screen went black. Within minutes, the internet went wild. Conspiracy theories exploded. Some claimed the government had cut the feed. Others said hackers were responsible. For nearly an hour, no one knew where Ilhan was. Then finally, she reappeared in a shaky live stream from her phone. Her hair was disheveled, her breathing uneven. "They tried to stop me," she said, her voice trembling. "But I won't be silent. Not now, not ever." The video ended abruptly, leaving viewers stunned. No one knew where she was broadcasting from, but the defiance in her eyes was unforgettable. It was no longer just a political scandal. It was a battle for truth, survival, and identity. And somewhere deep in the machinery of power, the people who had started it all were realizing that they might have pushed too far. Because Ilhan Omar wasn't running anymore. She was fighting back, and the world was finally watching. And as the cameras fade, and the chaos around Ilhan's name grows louder with every passing hour, one thing has become clear to everyone watching. This story is far from over. The whispers of deportation, the sudden investigation, the emotional breakdowns, and the unexpected twists have left fans all over the world asking the same question. What happens next? Will she fight back? Will she flee? Or will the truth finally come to light in a way no one saw coming? Emotions are high. The nation is divided, and the tension is something even her closest supporters can feel deep in their hearts. People are arguing online, hashtags are exploding, and every opinion seems to come with its own theory. Some believe she's being targeted unfairly. Others insist that the evidence speaks for itself. But amid all the noise, one thing can't be denied. This moment will go down as one of the most shocking political dramas in recent memory. The stakes are enormous, and the entire world is watching to see if Ilhan's story ends in redemption or downfall. And now we turn to you. Yes, you watching this right now. Do you think Ilhan deserves another chance? Or has the time finally come for her to face the consequences of what she's done? We want to hear what you think, so go down to the comments and tell us your thoughts. Was this all a setup, or did Trump's team just uncover something too big to hide? Whatever side you're on, your opinion matters, because this story isn't just about one person. It's about power, truth, and how quickly everything can change in America when secrets come to light. And if you've been following this story from the beginning, you know the twists are only getting wilder. There are still leaks that haven't surfaced, witnesses who haven't spoken, and insiders hinting that something even bigger is about to break. So if you think this was intense, trust me, the next chapter could change everything. Don't miss it. Make sure you hit that like button right now to show your support. And if you haven't already, click subscribe and turn on all notifications so you're the first to know when the next update drops. This channel is where the truth meets the drama, and where you get the real story before anyone else dares to tell it. And before you go, think about this. In a world where one mistake can destroy a career, one secret can shift the balance of power, and one rumor can divide millions. What would you do if the spotlight suddenly turned on you? Would you fight back like Ilhan, or would you disappear into the shadows before the world could decide your fate? That's the question we'll keep asking, and the one that will keep echoing long after the cameras stop rolling. So stay tuned, stay sharp, and stay ready. Because if there's one thing we've learned from this entire story, it's that nothing stays hidden forever. Truth always finds its way out, no matter how powerful the people trying to bury it may be. And when that truth hits, it hits hard. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking with us through every twist and turn. And remember, this is only the beginning. Hit that like button, subscribe, and drop your comment right now, because we're watching what you say, and your voice will help decide where this story goes next.